Jamie, I don't know your love of baseball, beer, or hot dogs. So on the 999, where would you fall in? Yes, no, or you'd like to try?
Look, I have a lot of things that I want to say about what you all just said there. I'm a Toronto guy. I used to live 10 minutes from the Dome. I didn't have seasons, but I was friends with someone who had seasons, so I would go all the time. And could I do 999? You know what? I think I have the frame for it, and I have the passion for those three things for it. So you know what? I'm going to go out and say yes. I could do it. And
Nice.
when I was younger, my brother and I visited my aunt who lived in Ottawa, the home of the Ottawa Lynx, when they were the Baltimore Orioles AAA affiliate, and they had 25-cent dogs, like literally 25 cents. And my brother and I, there was no beer involved, I don't think, but we had way too many hot dogs, but we managed it. So you know what? I'm going to say yes.
All right. Nugent's in. So here's
Boldly.
my thing. I think this all depends. First of all, it has to be some sort of light beer, like a Michelob Ultra or something like that, because I can't carb up. But the hot dog this is the linchpin. Is it a 7-Eleven type hot dog, a Circle K? Is it a Costco-esque dog? Like, how big is it? Is it a roasted barbecue hot dog, like from a campfire? Because they all taste different. I think that it all depends. There's a lot of factors here.
Yeah. You know what? That's a great point. And another factor for me, and I did some work closely with Big Daddy Dave on the road in the SJ a couple of years ago, and he may or may not remember that I am of the celiac nation. So another element, of course, be that it would have to be gluten-free. So if it's like a gluten-free light beer, a small little dog, no problem, no problem.
And
Yeah,
depending how long the 9 innings are, because you do
that's true.
not want somebody up mowing them down 1, 2, 3. Like we need some
Yeah.
long, like we need the LA Dodger World Series 5th inning. Remember
Yeah.
all that when it all kind of fell apart with the Yankees? Like we need, yeah.
Or the Jays
Jay,
and the Rangers back in the day there when
Oh, yeah.
Russell Martin threw the ball at the Texas Rangers batter's bat and everybody went ballistic.
yeah.
You know.
So let's talk hockey, Jamie. First of all, longtime broadcaster of the Notre Dame Hounds. The news comes out a couple months ago that the team would be moving to Warman. Now, obviously, there were some rumblings out there, but when it was finally announced, where were you emotionally when the decision was finally made?
Yeah, broken up. I had been party to the discussion, not the negotiations, of course. That's way above my pay grade, but the discussions. I didn't think it would actually hit me as hard as it did because I had a little bit of a run up to it. But then certainly, the guys, the team itself were on the road in Flin Flon, believe it or not. So they told the players, in a cabin up in Baker's Narrows, there near Flin Flon. You guys know the terrain, and the boys, I think, took it pretty hard. But I certainly was a mess probably for about a month just because of the relationships. Dave, you know this. Being the voice of different teams over the years, you build those relationships, and especially these young men grow to love and care for them, and have that opportunity to be close to them for years. So that part sucked. But I've kind of moved on a little bit, but I do appreciate the question though, because it certainly was crappy. But again, I appreciate Kyle McIntyre, the commissioner, and everybody, both keeping me in the loop and also reaching out and saying how you doing and whatever. Because even though we struggled as a team, you still have those relationships, and that's what it's all about.
So maybe that's the two-part question that I'll throw your way a little bit, because I know that Warman really has gone the extra distance to welcome the team to the community, from bringing them to the rink to showing them what the facilities might look like. And having said all that, there's still the caveat that, hey, but this is contingent on corporate support. This is contingent on Warman City Council approval. This is contingent on a season ticket drive that is going to get underway here this month. So is this 100% done deal? Like, we're not going to go back and say, well, it didn't work out in Warman. There just hasn't been enough support.
That's a wonderful question, Big Daddy Dave. And I have asked people, I said, what happens if they don't hit their, because if you guys don't know if you guys have reported on this, or people out there don't know, part of their messaging in Warman is we need to hit 1,000 season tickets sort of by May 15th, something like that. That's their target in order to gain full ratification of approval at Warman City Council. Now, there is no chance there will be a junior hockey team at Notre Dame next year. I know that for a fact, and what that would mean from a league perspective. I am the co-director of media for the SJHL as well, so I have the ear of not the ear of the commissioner, but I can talk to the commissioner, ask him these questions, and he said, it doesn't affect us. If the worst came to the absolute worst, I suppose they could run with 11 teams, but it would, I think they'll find a way to have hockey in Warman anyways. That's just a guess. But it's a great question, Daddy David. I know you know Kyle, and Maz, I know you know Kyle too. So if he gives you any more of a straight answer than he's given me, then I'd love to hear.
So they've obviously communicated to the players, right? Because these are developmental years for the players. So what's been their response and reaction to all of this? You mentioned it was an emotional time up in Flin Flon, but is their hockey future in doubt, in jeopardy moving forward? How has that been communicated to the players before they left?
Yeah, again, great question. So there's two things that the Warman ownership group actually bought, right? One was the license to run a team in the SJHL. There are 12. They got one of those licenses. The second thing that they bought was a list of players. Now, these players know, and Brett Pilkington, the coach and GM, who was the head coach and GM of the Hounds back since 2020, has been given a contract to be the head coach and GM in Warman as well, just for next year at least. And so he has communicated to all the players that if you're eligible to try out, you can maybe come to main camp and we'll see, but nobody has been given a spot. But again, it's a case-to-case basis. Some guys, we had lots of American players. They want to be closer to home, some of them. Other ones, are sort of thinking about other options. And certainly many of them have communicated to me that they would love to try out. And we're really, as you mentioned there, Dave, impressed with the kind of the tour and the wining and dining that they got from John Abramitz, one of the owners there in Warman, when we did a tour before playing the Humboldt Broncos in Humboldt. So it's kind of a mixed bag to answer your question, Dave, but certainly the ones that are interested to play for Warman next year are big time excited for the opportunity to play in that venue, to play for that community, because I'm sure you guys know that community, and I do too. It's going to be an amazing time up there if they can kind of get this over the line.
Jamie Neugebauer joining us on the Western Pizza Guest Hotline here on the SportsCage. Now, you'd mentioned you're part of the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, and you also you work for the league. Round 2 of the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League playoffs kick off tonight. You have the Weyburn Red Wings in Flin Flon to take on the Bombers, and you have the Yorkton Terriers in Melfort to take on the Mustangs. First of all, let's start Weyburn Flin Flon. That's a grueling bus ride, and I don't know if I'd wish that on anybody. But yesterday, Weyburn would have hopped on the bus, and they're up in Flin Flon. Jamie, what are you expecting from this series? Because Flin Flon, we know they can score. They had the best goalie in the league. They can play physical. Where are the cracks for Weyburn to try and work their way in? And because on paper, this doesn't seem fair.
Again, it's a great question, and the Weyburn Red Wings, when they've been at their best, they have been as good as anybody in the league, and they have proven it against Flin Flon. They won 3 of 4 in the regular season against the Bombers. Now, that all being said, 3 of those 4 games were before the Bombers got Matthew Keeper. The one game that the Red Wings did face Keeper, they did beat him in Weyburn in overtime, and it was a great game in late January. So the Weyburn Red Wings can certainly skate with Flin Flon and Melfort. Now the question is whether they can defend with Flin Flon and Melfort, whether they can hit with Flin Flon and Melfort. Those teams have all the experience in the world. Weyburn has none of it, really, if you think about it. So that's the thing that I think will be the question that will have to be answered, is whether they can handle it. I don't know if you guys have been up at the Whitney when it's going bananas in Flin Flon. It is an avalanche for the hardest of hardened junior hockey veterans to deal with when the Whitney Forum is going bananas. They certainly have skill. They have the speed. And Ethan DK, of course, who's committed to Michigan Tech. He's as dynamic of a forward as anybody in the SJHL out of London, Ontario. He's a really skilled guy. They got Jerome Maharaj, who maybe is the best playmaker in the SJHL. They have the Rookie of the Year in Max Chakrabarty. They've got an elite goalie in Angelo Zoll. So Weyburn has the talent. It's whether the Weyburn Red Wings that can play big boy hockey, wear their big boy pants, show up and play the Flin Flon Bombers, because we know the Flin Flon Bombers will do that. Mike Reagan will make sure they do that, and we'll see. But either it'll be short or it'll be long, but either way it'll be entertaining because both these teams can skate, and that's what you want to see.
And you look at the experience factor, Nugsy, in this series, and the fact that the Bombers have been there and the Red Wings are just starting to kind of get there. Are the Weyburn Red Wings playing with house money right now?
They don't see it that way, Dave. Again, great question, but they don't see it. They see themselves as big dogs. Great thing there, producer. Love that. You know what? They see themselves as big dogs. They have the talent. They had a lot of guys at the SJMJ Showcase in Winnipeg when the SJ All-Stars played the MJ. I think they're underdogs. A lot of sane people also think they're underdogs, but don't tell them that. Hey, you know what? They have to put their money where their mouth is, because the Bombers have proved it 3 years in a row that they got to the finals 3 years in a row. This would be their fourth if they can beat the Red Wings. So you gotta beat the best to be the best, as they say. And if the Wings can prove that, then they'll make a lot of believers. But right now, it's on them to prove it.
A more palatable bus trip is the trip from Yorkton to Melfort. That's like a walk in the park compared to Weyburn to Flin Flon. Two really good hockey teams. They were great throughout the regular season, near the top of the class. So what do we expect? Yorkton, Melfort. If anything, would anybody be surprised if this automatically is a 7-gamer that maybe goes to overtime to decide it because they're incredibly close?
I'd be surprised if it goes to 7, just because of the level of pedigree and respect that the Melfort Mustangs have. Look, they have run over the SJHL this year. They didn't do it with the same type of flash and pizzazz that the Flin Flon Bombers did last year, running over the league. But this is the number 5 team as the CJHL rankings ended in Canada, and probably better than 5 if you take the algorithms out of the equation with the CJHL rankings. We can get into that another time. But look, this Melfort Mustangs team is heavy. They have 12 guys, 13 guys that were in the Centennial Cup last year. They have a coach in Trevor Blevins, who's the reigning SJHL Coach of the Year. He's I see kind of both of these matchups almost as Darth Vader versus Luke Skywalker. In terms of the experienced guy, the Trevor Blevins and the Mike Reagan versus the younger guys in Emery Lawson and Cody Mapes coaching their teams and getting to this kind of rarefied air for the first time in the SJHL. So it's up to Luke Skywalker to prove it. And I'm sure if you were there during Star Wars, you probably weren't betting on Luke Skywalker either. To me, the Yorkton Terriers are kind of the Luke Skywalkers right now, because they have talent. Sure, certainly there's that storyline of David Coyle and Tommy Reese on the Yorkton Terriers, who were traded from Melfort during last year in a very good trade. But still, kids always want to prove that you were wrong to make that move. Am I right? That's true in pro. That's true everywhere. People want to prove guys wrong. And so, David Coyle has been wonderful for Yorkton all year, on top of that top line with the forward of the year and Jaron Denoyer. So, we'll see if those guys can generate offense. The defense really shut down the Melville Millionaires in the first round for Yorkton. I mentioned on the show, we were previewing the second round yesterday, that the Melfort Mustangs scored 49 more goals in the regular season than Melville. So it's a different beast, but still, there is talent in Yorkton. So again, they'll have to prove it. I think if Weyburn's an underdog and Yorkton's even more of an underdog. So, we will see. Melfort didn't lose to Yorkton in the regular season at all. So, again, it's a prove it, but the Yorkton Terriers have gone through a lot of adversity this year. We'll see if they can do it again.
Well, the story behind this series might be the fact that there's no room at the inn, right? The Yorkton Terriers don't have anywhere to stay in Melfort, so they got to bus in every night. But yeah. I know that Benny Walchuk would be tearing the seats out of the bus if he heard me even suggest this. But at the start of the year, to me, it seemed like the Yorkton Terriers were full sails ahead. And then all of a sudden they had that little blip where there was the paperwork error and they had to go ahead and forfeit those couple of games. And then they just kind of cruised, but they didn't seem to be leading the pack, if you know what I mean. Can you explain to me this series and the I guess, the season that the Yorkton Terriers have had to get here? Because to me, it's kind of like they were so far out in front and now they've kind of been pulled back.
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously, I guess I'm not a regular employee of Notre Dame anymore, but I can still use the struggle and emerge motto. The Terriers have had their adversity, right? I mean, you mentioned the forfeitures. You didn't mention the fact that probably their two best forwards, maybe two of their three best forwards left for the BCHL around the new year in Keenan Ingram and Dustin Renas. On top of that, they've had a lot of injuries. On top of that, they only have one 20-year-old defenseman, and he's not really a top four defenseman, with all due respect to Harrison Aldridge. They've got very, very good young players, and that really bodes well for the future of the Yorkton Terriers. They've had overcome so much. But yeah, you know what? Emery Lawson and his staff, they deserve a lot of credit for getting this Yorkton team to where it is. The attendance in Yorkton has been unbelievable, like over 2,000 fans a game for the most part. I think part of that is the fact that the Terriers do play an exciting brand of hockey. I think there's something to say about winning and sustainable winning and yada, yada, yada. But if you play an entertaining brand that also brings people in, and also their ticket prices are probably as reasonable as anybody's in the league, which, I kind of like to see that when they're trying to start out from where they were, struggling financially a couple of years ago. But as an organization, they're so healthy, they're so well supported, and whatever happens in this series, they should be very happy to have Emery Lawson around. Now, to understand this series, they're going to have to score a lot, and that's not an easy thing. The Melfort Mustangs, they defend as well as anybody I've ever seen in the SJHL in my time since 2017. Like, this is a decor that has four 20-year-olds that is, has zero holes, that can skate, that can hit, that can score. They have every single thing you need to win a championship, this Melfort Mustangs team. My only question mark for Melfort is who's in net. Christian Coombs, he won a game at the Centennial Cup, but is he healthy? Is it Madden Malacca, the potentially future Regina Pats goaltender? Will he step in or need to step in if he's healthy? That'll be the question mark only really for Melfort. And if they can get all their, tick all those boxes that they expect them to tick, I honestly don't think they'll have a hard time with the Yorkton Terriers.
All right. Jamie Neugebauer joining us in the Western Pizza guest hotline here. We'll wrap on this. You mentioned you're originally from Toronto, so I don't know. I may assume you could be a Leafs fan if you do cheer for an NHL team, but we'll leave that alone because you're in first place. Social media is on fire. Why wouldn't you be getting the cup this year? I mean, it's a foregone conclusion. I mean, listen, let's out west before you go. In your mind, you watch a lot of hockey. Any chance that the Flames or the Canucks can make a miracle comeback and catch either Minnesota or St. Louis to get that final wild card spot in the NHL?
You know what the problem isn't that those teams don't have quality, because they do. The problem is the teams in front of them. The problem is that it's such a grind. And you know what? I think, again, they've got a lot of heart, those teams. They got a lot of leadership, but it's just the amount of teams to climb over. Now, Dave, you did mention something too earlier that I do want to touch on, if you can forgive me for one moment. If you put your mental health on the Blue Jays, that is a big mistake, because they play so many games. You're just going to be up and down and losing your mind. It's amazing you have such incredible hair. That always blows me away whenever I see you, Big Daddy Dave. But look, the Blue Jays, let's enjoy it. They have a crazy bunch of series ahead full of torpedo bats. So hopefully they don't get hit with a bunch of torpedo bat dingers the next little while. But hey, we enjoyed them mauling the Washington Nationals, and hopefully they survive the next 9 series.
All right. We'll leave it there. The Blue Jays are your second week of Major League Baseball World Series champions. And probably the best thing to come out of this interview is Dave Thomas has a nickname, Big Daddy Dave, which I don't think will ever be going away after today's show.